I never thought I'd marry anyone, let alone a loudmouthed, city-born brat in skinny jeans who thought horses were kinda scary up close. But life has a way of twisting your gut when you least expect it, and mine got real twisted one hazy night in a bar just outside of Amarillo. It started as a joke. A bet. I'd had a couple beers. All right, maybe more than a couple, and so had my ranch hands. We were playing cards at the local dive, the kind of place where the jukebox still played Garth Brooks and the bar top was sticky with history. That's when Beau walked in. Tight black jeans, a tank top that showed way too much collarbone, and dyed red hair slicked back like he was trying to piss somebody off. Which he probably was. He had that kind of face, sharp, cocky, pretty, in a way that made straight men hate him on sight. He sauntered up to the bar and ordered a whiskey like he belonged, even though he stuck out like a sore thumb at a tractor convention. Some of the boys started making comments under their breath. Nothing loud, but enough. He ignored it, tossed back his drink, then turned right around, stared straight at me and said, "You look like a man who doesn't know how to have fun." That's all it took. I don't know if it was the booze or the boredom, but I leaned back in my chair, tipped my hat up, and smirked. "Sweetheart, I've had more fun in a saddle than you've had in your whole glittery life." He tilted his head. "Wanna bet?" We kept drinking, one up after one up. Who'd ridden the wildest ride, pulled the dumbest stunt, kissed the wrong person? At some point, someone yelled, "You two should just get married if you're gonna bicker like that." Beau raised his glass. "Fine, let's get married. Bet you won't." I laughed. So did the bar. And then, God help me, I said, "All right, let's do it." Someone drove us to the 24-hour chapel 3 towns over. Neither of us backed down. I don't remember much about the ceremony. I think I put the ring on the wrong hand. Beau wore aviators the whole time and asked the minister if he could say something gay. We signed the paper. We kissed. Everyone clapped. I woke up in a motel bed with a ring on my finger and a legal marriage certificate on the nightstand. Beau was in the shower humming Lady Gaga. "What the hell did we just do?" I asked through the door. "We got married, Cowboy," he called back. "You bet I wouldn't." I scrubbed my hands down my face. "You serious about this?" "Are you?" he replied, stepping out in nothing but a towel. That towel slipped a little when he said, "Unless you want to back out. Annulment's just paperwork." I should have said yes. I should have ended it right there. But the damn thing is, I didn't. And not because I was drunk or too proud. It's because when I looked at him, dripping wet, smart-ass smirk, no fear in those bright eyes, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, alive. So I said, "Nah. Let's see where this ride goes." He raised a brow. "You sure? I'm a lot, Cowboy." I just nodded. "Yeah, you are." I took him back to my ranch the next day. My foreman thought I was kidding. My aunt threatened to call a priest. Beau unpacked a single suitcase that contained 3 pairs of pants, 2 mesh tops, and a tube of glittery chapstick. He didn't even ask which room was his. Just flopped onto my bed and said, "This'll do." And somehow, that became our routine. Him in my space. Me letting him. But the weirdest part? We never touched. Not like that. We slept in the same bed, but he always curled up on the far side, arms wrapped around a pillow. We joked, bickered, cooked, worked. Sort of. He was terrible at chores, but he tried. He named the chickens after drag queens. He screamed the first time he saw a spider the size of a quarter. I started to like him. Actually like him. And just when I thought I'd figured him out, the night of our wedding anniversary, 4 weeks after that wild bet, he turned to me after dinner and said, "So, I've never done this before." "Done what?" "You know." He scratched the back of his neck, looking uncharacteristically shy. "Intimacy," I blinked. "You're a virgin?" He nodded. And then, real quiet, he said, Thought you should know before anything happens. I just stared at him. Not because I judged him, but because, in that moment, I realized this wasn't a game for him. This wasn't a joke anymore. Neither was it for me. Beau didn't say anything else after dropping that bombshell. He just stood there in my kitchen, barefoot, biting his lip, looking everywhere but at me. The guy who usually had a comeback for everything suddenly had nothing. I opened my mouth, then closed it. I didn't know what to say either. We'd been living like some weird version of a sitcom couple, arguing over what brand of almond milk to buy, splitting chores, cooking dinner together, falling asleep side by side. But I hadn't expected that. Not from him. Not from someone who walked into my life with that kind of swagger. "You okay?" I asked finally, trying to keep my voice low and steady. He shrugged. Yeah, I just figured if we were gonna, eventually. He trailed off, fidgeting with the hem of his oversized tee. You thought I should know. I finished for him. He nodded, still not meeting my eyes. I leaned against the counter, arms folded, heart doing a slow, hard thump in my chest. I ain't in a rush, Beau, I said honestly. I like having you around. That got his attention. He glanced up, his eyes searching my face like he didn't quite believe it. You do? Yeah. I gave him a half smile. You're loud as hell and you keep trying to convince my cows to be vegan, but yeah, I do. That pulled a small laugh out of him. He relaxed just a bit, enough to finally take a breath. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I just didn't want it to get weird later, like you'd expect me to be all experienced or whatever. I wasn't exactly beating them off with a stick back in high school. I shook my head. Beau, I wasn't going to push for anything you weren't ready for. Hell, I figured we'd never even get to that point. He raised an eyebrow. Why? Because I'm the rebellious city boy. You married on a drunk dare? No, I said, pushing off the counter. Because I figured you'd be gone by now. That hit him. I saw it in the way his shoulders dropped. I thought about it, he admitted. First week, packed my bag twice, but you kept being decent. He sounded like that was a rare thing. We stood there in silence for a moment. The only sound, the soft whir of the old fridge, and the ticking of the clock above the stove. I stepped forward and gently reached out to take his hand. He didn't pull away. Come on, I said. Let's go sit outside. We walked out to the porch, where the night was quiet, and the stars spilled across the sky like someone had kicked over a bucket of light. He curled up in the porch swing, his knees pulled to his chest, and I sat beside him. Neither of us talked for a long time. Then, out of nowhere, Beau said, I've never slept next to anyone before. Not like this. I used to have nightmares as a kid, and my mom would make me sleep on the couch so I wouldn't wake her. I felt that, like a punch to the ribs. I'm not her, I said quietly. He looked at me, eyes wide, like he wasn't expecting me to say it. Then he nodded. I know. We sat there until the chill in the air crept under our clothes, and I finally stood. Let's get to bed, I said. Come on. Back inside, I gave him space to brush his teeth. Change, whatever he needed. When he came out of the bathroom, he wore an oversized flannel shirt, one of mine, and nothing else. I was already under the covers when he crawled in, staying close to his side of the bed like usual, but this time he didn't curl away from me. Instead, he reached out, fingers barely brushing my wrist. You can hold me if you want, he whispered. I didn't move fast. I slid closer, wrapping my arm around him, feeling the tremble in his back and the way he slowly let out a breath he'd been holding for years. He tucked his face against my chest, warm and nervous and brave all at once. I'm not scared, he murmured. I know. We didn't do anything that night. We didn't have to. But it was the first night I realized I wasn't just playing along anymore. I wanted this boy, his laugh, his mood swings, his soft voice in the dark. I wanted it all. And I was in deep. Living with Beau started to feel less like a weird social experiment and more like life. the kind you quietly settle into without realizing it. Mornings with him brushing his teeth while I brewed coffee. Evenings where we'd eat on the porch, wrapped in one of my hoodies because he always claimed it got cold after sunset. Even when it was 80 degrees out. We still fought, don't get me wrong, about dumb things. He kept leaving his boots in the middle of the hallway. I refused to buy oat milk. He said I needed better taste in music. I said he needed to stop dyeing his hair in our kitchen sink. But none of it really mattered. What mattered was that somewhere in the mess of jokes and jabs and half-cooked dinners, I'd started to care. Really care. And I knew, somewhere deep down, he did too. He started leaving little things for me. A post-it note on the fridge that said, "You're not bad for a hick." A bottle of my favorite beer in the fridge after a long day. He even fixed my old radio, the one I hadn't bothered with in years, just so he could surprise me with a crackling Willie Nelson track one morning. But the shift happened on a Thursday night. I'd had a long day fixing a busted fence post out in the back pasture. My hands were raw, shoulders sore. When I got home, Beau was curled on the couch in pajama pants and that ridiculous unicorn hoodie he wore when he was in a mood. He didn't say anything, just looked at me. "You okay?" I asked, kicking off my boots. "Yeah," he said. "Just thinking. Dangerous habit." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I sat down beside him, and he leaned into me like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," he said after a minute. "What do you mean?" "I mean, this. You. All of it." He waved vaguely toward the room. "I've never had something that didn't end in disaster. Like, eventually, you're gonna get sick of me or I'm gonna screw it up." I stared at him, unsure how to respond to that kind of honesty. "You planning to screw it up?" I asked. He shook his head. "Not on purpose." "Then, maybe don't borrow trouble that ain't arrived." He looked up at me, and for once, he didn't try to deflect with a joke or a smirk. He just nodded. Then he said it. "I think I'm falling for you." The words hung in the air between us, heavier than anything either of us had ever admitted out loud. "You think?" I asked, trying not to smile. He rolled his eyes, but there was a tremble in his voice when he said, "I know, okay? I know." I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't rushed or messy. It was soft, tentative, the kind of kiss that asked permission and promised more. He melted into it, sighing against my mouth like he'd been waiting for that moment his whole damn life. When we pulled apart, I pressed my forehead to his. "You wanna?" I asked gently, unsure how to phrase the question without making it sound like pressure. He shook his head. "Not yet, but soon." That was fine by me. We held each other on that couch for a long time. No TV, no phones, just the creak of the house settling around us and the soft thrum of the ceiling fan overhead. And that night, when we crawled into bed, he pressed closer than usual. No pillow barrier, no awkward space between us. Just him, his hand on my chest, his breathing slow and even. He fell asleep first, and I laid there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell I got lucky enough to marry someone who made chaos feel like home. I'd been in a few relationships before, mostly short, always messy, but nothing like this. Nothing that made folding laundry together feel like a small kind of intimacy. Nothing that made a shared glance over breakfast say more than any words could. The thing was, Beau still pretended this wasn't real, sometimes. Not in a cruel way, just like he didn't know how to let himself believe it. He still joked that our marriage was a stunt. He called me husband, in a tone that was halfway between sarcastic and shy. But then, I'd catch him doing something like fixing the fence gate without asking, or brushing my dog's fur with a weird kind of reverence, like he was trying to earn his spot here one task at a time. We were in this quiet rhythm, slow and strange and new. And then, one Saturday, that rhythm got broken. His mom called. I was hauling hay when I saw him standing near the barn, back turned, phone to his ear, stiff as a board. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could tell it wasn't good. He didn't talk about his family much, said they weren't fans of the whole me being me situation. I'd never pressed. When he finally came inside that evening, he looked like a ghost. "Everything all right?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just set his phone down and walked to the sink, splashing cold water on his face. "Mom wants me to come home for a couple days," he said, not turning around. "Okay," I said carefully. "You gonna go?" He shrugged. "I don't know. She said my uncle's sick, but mostly, I think she wants to parade me around to prove I haven't turned into some intimate, crazed gay Satanist living in sin with a cowboy." I leaned against the table, watching him. "You want me to come with you?" That made him turn. His eyes were soft, tired. "You'd do that?" "Yeah, if you want me there." He looked at me like I'd just offered to lasso the moon. But then he shook his head. "Nah, she doesn't even know I'm married, and she sure as hell wouldn't understand it was a bet that turned into whatever this is." I didn't push, I just nodded. "You do what you gotta do." He left the next morning, suitcase in hand, hugging me like he didn't know when, or if, he'd come back. The house felt too quiet without him, too still. I spent 3 days pacing, barely slept, checked my phone every 10 minutes. When he finally texted, it was short. "Miss you. This sucks," I called him. He picked up on the first ring. "Hey," he said, voice thin. "You still alive out there?" "Yeah," I said. "But I've had to talk to myself more than usual." He let out a small laugh. "I'm coming back tomorrow." "Everything okay?" "No," he said. "But I'll tell you when I get home." And he did. That next night, after the sun had set and the crickets were humming like they always did, he crawled back into our bed like he'd never left. "I told her," he said into the dark. "Told her what?" "That I'm married, that I live with a man, that I love you." I turned toward him, stunned. "She freaked out," he continued. "Said I was confused, that I'd regret it. Said some things I'm probably going to carry for a while." I didn't know what to say. I just reached out, ran my fingers through his hair. "But I don't regret it," he whispered. "Not even close." He moved closer, so close that our legs tangled and I could feel his breath on my neck. "I think I'm ready," he said. I blinked. "Ready?" "For more." His fingers found mine under the blanket, interlaced. "I want this. I want you. For real." And in that moment, I knew this wasn't about some closeness. Not really. It was about trust. It was about him choosing to be vulnerable. "With me." I kissed his forehead. "We go slow," I said. He nodded. "We go slow." But that night, for the first time, he didn't turn away. He pulled me in and held on like I was the safest place he'd ever been. The morning after was quiet. Not awkward, not stiff, just soft, like neither of us wanted to break whatever spell had settled between us in the night. Beau was still curled against me when the sun started pushing through the curtains. His hair was a mess, face tucked into my chest like he didn't want the world to find him. He didn't say anything when he woke up, just stretched slowly, yawned, and looked at me with sleepy eyes that made something in my chest ache. "You always stare this much in the morning?" he mumbled. "Only when I wake up next to someone who kicked in my door 4 weeks ago, married me on a bet, and then somehow stole half my closet." He grinned and whispered, "You like it." I didn't deny it. We got up, made coffee in silence, still barefooted and rumpled. He didn't bother putting on anything besides one of my flannels. I didn't bother pretending I minded. I thought that would be the start of something smoother, something simpler, but I was wrong. Beau didn't know how to let people love him. Not really. I could see it in the way he joked every time something got too sincere, the way he flinched when I reached for his hand in public, the way he pulled away when I looked at him too long with anything resembling softness. He wanted it, needed it even, but it scared the hell out of him. And one night, that fear got loud. We were at the county fair. Just something to do. Small town stuff. Corn dogs, lights, music, people I hadn't seen since high school. Beau had never been, and he made a whole show of pretending to hate it while secretly loving every minute. He dragged me on rides, made fun of the petting zoo, got powdered sugar all over his face from a funnel cake. But then, just before we left, someone recognized us. I was talking to a guy the first used to rope with, just catching up. We weren't even talking about anything serious when he looked past me and said, That your boy? Beau froze. I could feel it. I turned and said, yeah. The guy nodded, said something about us making a cute couple, and moved on. But Beau didn't say a word all the way to the truck. He sat stiff in the passenger seat, eyes locked on the window, his jaw set tight. I tried to let it go, let him have his space. But when we got home, he didn't come in. He stood by the porch steps, arms crossed. What's going on? I asked, leaning on the doorframe. He didn't look at me. You shouldn't say that. Say what? That I'm your boy. Like that. I blinked, stunned. You are, though. He finally looked at me, eyes sharp. Not here. Not with those people. I stepped out onto the porch, voice low. Why not? Because they look at me like I'm a joke. Like I'm some city freak playing house with a cowboy. You care what they think? He flinched. You don't? No, I said. Not when it comes to you. He stared at me like he couldn't decide whether to kiss me or run. I didn't grow up around this, he said. Guys like me got pushed downstairs, told to shut up, told to act right. I don't get to be the husband in some small-town fairy tale. You already are, I said quietly. He turned away. I didn't follow. I gave him space. That's what he needed. But when I went to bed that night, the space between us had returned. That invisible barrier, no pillow wall this time, but he stayed on his side, curled up tight, not touching, like he was afraid of what it meant to be wanted out loud. Like he didn't know how to believe it would last. It took 3 days before he said anything. 3 days of quiet tension, of him barely looking me in the eye. We still shared a bed, still shared space, but something had gone dim in him, like he'd flicked the lights off inside and couldn't figure out where the switch was. I let him be. I didn't push, didn't pry. Beau wasn't the type you dragged answers out of. He had to hand them over himself, trembling palms and all. On the 3rd night, I was out back fixing a busted hinge on the chicken coop when I heard the screen door creak. I didn't turn around. He came up behind me slowly, boots crunching against the dirt. I'm sorry, he said. I finished tightening the bolt before standing up, wiping my hands on my jeans. For what? For shutting down, snapping at you. For acting like this thing between us is something to be ashamed of. I finally turned. He looked small, arms folded across his chest, eyes on the ground. I meant it, he said. When I told you I love you, I just didn't expect someone like you to actually want someone like me. Especially out here. You keep saying that like I'm some kind of saint. You're not, he said, smiling weakly. You snore, and you've got the emotional range of a barn cat, I chuckled. That's fair. But you're good, he added. And I'm not used to good. I stepped closer. You think you don't deserve it? He didn't answer, but the silence was enough. I reached out, cupped the side of his face, and made him look at me. You do, I said. Every damn bit of it. He leaned into my hand, eyes closing for a second, like he was trying to absorb it. Okay, he whispered. Okay. That night, back in our bed, he was the one who kissed me first. It started slow, like always, but there was something different this time. Less hesitation, more hunger. Like he'd finally decided to stop holding himself back. He climbed into my lap, straddling me, his hands shaking, even as he ran them up my chest. I could feel his heartbeat racing against mine. His breath caught when I kissed his neck, his collarbone, his shoulder. Still sure? I murmured against his skin. He nodded. Yeah, I want this. So I took my time. Every touch, every kiss, every whispered word. I made sure he knew I was there, that I wasn't going anywhere, that he was safe. We didn't rush. We didn't need to. When it finally happened, when he wrapped around me with a gasp and a shiver, it wasn't perfect. We laughed when he knocked his knee into mine. He swore under his breath when I fumbled the lube. But it was ours, and when it was over, and he was curled up against me with one leg thrown over mine, he whispered, "That was better than I thought it'd be." I kissed the top of his head. Yeah? He nodded. Kinda mad I waited this long, he added, sleep already tugging at his voice. "You didn't," I said. "You did it when you were ready." He yawned, mumbled something I couldn't make out, and then he was out cold. I stayed awake a little longer, one hand on his back, just feeling him breathe. The boy I married on a bet. The boy who made my quiet life into something loud and real and worth waking up for. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Life after that night didn't get easier, but it got deeper. We didn't magically become perfect, and Beau didn't wake up suddenly healed from whatever had built up inside him over the years. But something changed. The way he held my hand without looking over his shoulder, the way he reached for me in his sleep, the way he looked at me like I was real, not just something temporary or stupid he'd regret. And for the first time, he let himself belong. He started planting roots he didn't know he wanted. He fixed the porch light, painted the mailbox without me asking. He started leaving his toothbrush next to mine instead of tucked in his travel bag like he might have to pack it up at any moment. One morning, I caught him humming while folding our laundry. He didn't even notice he was doing it. "You know," I said, leaning in the doorway, arms crossed, "you're starting to act like a husband." He gave me a look. "And you're starting to sound like a man who enjoys having his skinny jean-wearing city husband around." "Don't flatter yourself," I said, walking up and stealing a sock out of his hand just to hear him groan. "You still can't cook for shit." "Excuse you, I made eggs last week. You boiled them into rubber." We kept laughing, bickering, flirting. Until one night, about a month later, I came home from a supply run to find Beau sitting on the porch with this strange expression on his face. He had a letter in his hand, a real one, stamped and postmarked from Austin. "Got something from home?" I asked, dropping the feed bags by the door. He didn't answer right away, just held out the envelope. It was from his mom. I didn't open it. Wasn't mine to open, but the way he looked after reading it told me more than words could. He was shaken, but not broken. "She said she's sorry," he said finally, his voice tight. "She said she still doesn't get it, but she wants to try. Asked if I'd come visit next month. Said I could bring you." That caught me off guard. "Really?" He nodded, still staring at the letter like it might vanish. "I think I might go," he said. "Not for her. For me. To stop pretending that part of my life doesn't exist." "You want me to come?" He looked up at me, then reached out, hand sliding into mine. "Yeah. I want to bring my husband." There it was. No jokes, no sarcasm, just truth. That weekend, we drove 2 towns over to officially file the marriage paperwork that somehow never got turned in. That night, we got married on a dare. The lady behind the desk asked if we were sure. Beau grinned and said, "We've been married for months. We're just catching up." When we walked out, papers in hand, he said, "So, this means we're really married now." "We were before," I said, "but now it's just got government backing." He slipped his hand into my back pocket and said, "Guess that means you're stuck with me." And you know what? I was glad to be stuck. Because that boy, the one I thought was all attitude and eyeliner and chaos, turned out to be the best damn thing that ever happened to me. The first time Beau called the ranch home, I didn't even notice it at first. We were driving back from the feed store, dusty and sunburned, and he leaned back in the passenger seat and said, "We got any beer left at home?" Home. Not your place. Not the ranch. Just home. I didn't say anything. Just smiled and drove a little slower, like I didn't want the moment to pass too fast. He still wore nail polish sometimes. Still dyed his hair red every few weeks and blasted pop music from the barn like he was trying to start a protest. But he also learned how to mend a fence, how to muck a stall, how to talk to the neighbors without flinching. He made this life his, even if it wasn't the one he thought he'd ever want. One night, months later, I came in from the field late. He was in the kitchen, barefoot, wearing one of my old flannels with nothing underneath, flipping pancakes even though it was 9:30 at night. I wrapped my arms around him from behind. "You still think this was just a bet?" He leaned back into me, let his head fall onto my shoulder, and said, "Nah, this was fate disguised as a dare." And that was that. A wild, ridiculous start. But somehow, exactly the right ending.